way down and step out of the vehicle, now.
My hands are up, officer. I'm not armed. I'm on my way to pick up my son from school. I'm just asking why this is turning into something more than a traffic stop.
You're being non-compliant. You're refusing lawful...
When the officer raised his baton toward the driver's side window, Andre already knew what was coming. He sat in the driver's seat with both hands high on the steering wheel. The officer stood inches from the window, telling Andre that this was his last chance, that if he did not follow every instruction exactly as ordered, the window would be broken and he would be pulled out. Andre tried to keep his voice steady as he spoke through the small gap of the half-open window. He told the officer that his hands were visible, that he was not armed, that he was on his way to pick up his son from school. He repeated that he was not refusing anything. He was only trying to understand why this simple traffic stop was suddenly being treated like a dangerous arrest. The officer responded that Andre was non-compliant, that he was ignoring lawful commands, that his behavior was suspicious and a threat to officer safety. He told Andre that any hesitation to exit the vehicle would be taken as defiance. He warned that if Andre did not step out immediately, force would be used. All of this was happening with a child's backpack visible on the passenger seat and a navigation app on the phone showing a route to an elementary school. The baton hovered near the window. The officer said this was the final warning. Just before the glass shattered, Andre thought about how many times this had happened to him in less than a year. 4 traffic stops. 4 variations of the same fear. Each time the justification had been something small. A light that supposedly flickered, a lane change questioned, a routine check. Each time he had wondered whether the next command would be the one that turned routine into something else. This time the escalation felt different. It felt deliberate. If someone had a baton raised toward your car window right now, how would you react? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if stories about real-life encounters, racism, and accountability matter to you, tap like and subscribe so more people see these breakdowns. Earlier that afternoon, Andre had been driving through San Diego's streets he knew his entire life. He was a native of the city, a construction worker, and a father of 2. On this particular day, his focus was simple: reach his son's school on time. His car was not new, but it ran. He followed a route he had taken many times. At one intersection, he rolled to a full stop at a stop sign, looked both ways, and then continued. He did it almost automatically. There was nothing dramatic about it. A few blocks later, he noticed police lights in his rearview mirror. He understood what that meant. He signaled, pulled over promptly to the side of the road, put the car in park, and set both hands on the steering wheel. He lowered his window partway and kept his phone mounted on the dashboard recording. He was not speeding. He had not swerved. There had been no near miss with another vehicle. The only thing he could think of was that stop sign. The first officer approached the driver's side, already carrying an edge in his posture. He asked Andre if he knew why he had been stopped. Andre replied that he did not. The officer told him that he had run the stop sign back there, and that this was the reason for the traffic stop. Andre knew he had stopped completely, but he also knew from experience that debating that detail at the roadside rarely led anywhere useful. He stated calmly that he believed he had come to a full stop. The officer took that as backtalk and reminded Andre that failing to acknowledge the violation was not helping him. When the officer demanded license and registration, Andre did not immediately move to retrieve them. Instead, he asked the officer to clarify the legal grounds for the stop and whether there was any evidence beyond the officer's word. Andre believed that without a valid reason, he was not obliged to hand over documents. He had been pulled over too many times recently to treat each justification as automatically honest. The officer instructed Andre to lower the window all the way. Andre already had it halfway down. He could be heard clearly. He stated that he was comfortable with it at that level and that he could still comply with any instruction. The officer interpreted that boundary as resistance. His tone sharpened. He said that full visibility was necessary and that Andre's preference didn't matter. He repeated the order to roll the window all the way down. Andre stayed calm. He stated that he was not refusing and that he was willing to cooperate, but he also mentioned that he was recording and that his hands were in plain sight. He asked if he was being treated as a threat for any specific reason. The officer did not provide a clear reason. Instead, he shifted to a familiar script: mention of non-compliance, warnings about consequences, references to danger. He told Andre that if he did not immediately obey every command, he would be removed from the car. A second police vehicle arrived. A backup officer stepped out and moved toward the passenger side. Now Andre had 2 uniforms around him, 2 body cameras, and the static tension that comes when one officer feeds off another's assumptions. The second officer asked quietly what was going on. The first officer told her that the driver had run a stop sign and was now acting suspicious, refusing to roll the window all the way down and not exiting the vehicle promptly when told. He described Andre as potentially armed and dangerous, even though he had seen no weapon, no sudden movement, no direct threat. Andre heard the phrase armed and dangerous and understood what it meant in practice: justification for force, justification for a sudden escalation. He repeated from his seat that he was unarmed, that he was a construction worker heading to pick up his son, and that he wanted to keep his hands visible and record the interaction for his own safety. The first officer did not respond to the content of those words. Instead, he raised his voice and declared that Andre was refusing lawful commands. He warned that failure to exit the vehicle immediately would result in officers having to extract him. He stated that this would include breaking the window if necessary. The second officer watched Andre closely. From her position, she could see his shoulders, his hands, the quiet rise and fall of his chest. She said more to the first officer than to Andre that the driver appeared calm. The first officer rejected that assessment. He argued that calm behavior could be a tactic, that in his experience, drivers could switch from calm to violent quickly. He repeated that hesitation itself was a warning sign. Andre was now faced with a choice he knew too well: either exit the car in a way that made him feel exposed and unsafe, or stay seated and be labeled non-compliant. He tried one more time to slow things down. He stated that he was willing to exit, but wanted to understand whether he was being detained for a simple traffic infraction or something more, and whether he was under arrest. The warning was repeated. If Andre did not exit the vehicle immediately, the window would be broken and he would be removed by force. The baton was lifted. The second officer murmured that the driver did not appear to be resisting. The first officer decided that this did not matter. The baton came down on the glass. The first strike was enough to fracture the window into a tight web of cracks. A second blow pushed the fragments inward. The glass broke away in a sudden burst, scattering pieces across Andre's lap, the seat, and the pavement outside. Some shards grazed his forearms and neck, but he kept his hands up. As soon as the opening was large enough, the first officer reached in through the broken window. He grabbed Andre's wrist in a hard grip and used the leverage to yank the door handle from the inside. The door swung open. Andre's was pulled sideways toward the gap. Andre did not swing, shove, or twist toward the officer. He tried to move with the direction of the pull to avoid making any sudden movements that could be interpreted as resistance. Despite that, the officer began issuing rapid commands, telling Andre commands that overlapped each other, even as Andre was already being physically dragged from the car. Once Andre's feet hit the ground, the officer twisted his arm behind his back and walked him forward several steps before leaning him against the side of the car. The motion was rough enough to make Andre's shoulder ache. His cheek came close to the metal, and he could feel glass crunching under his shoes. The second officer moved to the other side of Andre's body and assisted in bringing his other arm behind him. Together, they secured handcuffs around his wrists. During this, Andre kept his voice as level as he could manage. He stated more than once that he was not resisting and that he had not made any sudden movements. The officers did not acknowledge that. They continued to frame their own actions as a response to resistance, even though the physical reality did not match that description. With the cuffs in place, they guided him, more by pressure than guidance, to sit down on the curb. From that low angle, he could see his own car at eye level, the broken window a jagged opening where his control over the situation had ended. Then officers began to search his car. The search was not accompanied by a request for consent. There was no explanation offered that would justify treating this as anything more than a traffic stop. The officers moved through the interior of the car methodically, opening the glove compartment, checking the center console, looking under the seats, and examining the backpack on the passenger seat. Inside the backpack, they found nothing illegal, only school-related items. In the glove compartment, they found ordinary paperwork, insurance documents, and other mundane items. Under the seats, they found nothing of significance. Despite the fact that there was no sign of contraband, weapons, or evidence of any crime beyond the alleged traffic violation, the officers continued to operate as if their initial decision to escalate had been justified. A woman parked on the opposite side of the street had already begun recording on her phone from inside her own vehicle. From her angle, the footage captured the smashed window, the extraction, the handcuffing, and the calm posture Andre maintained throughout. The first officer finished searching the interior and stepped back out of the car. He announced to the second officer, to his own body camera, that the driver had refused lawful commands, that he had been non-compliant, and that force had been necessary for officer safety. He did not mention that no weapon had been found, no contraband had been discovered, and that the only threatening action Andre had taken was to question the legitimacy of the stop and withhold his documents. Andre listened to this version of events as it was spoken in real time. He understood that these words would later appear in reports, in justifications, possibly in court. He knew that the phrase non-compliant would be repeated, and that it could easily overshadow the fact that he had kept his hands visible, remained seated, and spoken calmly. Eventually, the officers brought him to his feet. The first officer informed him that he was under arrest. The charges referenced were the familiar cluster that often appears in such incidents: resisting, obstructing, delaying an officer in the performance of duty. The alleged rolling through the stop sign was now almost secondary. The traffic pretext had served its purpose. Andre was walked to the patrol car and placed in the back seat. From that position, his thoughts narrowed to a few sharp points. He was aware that his skin color, his refusal to surrender his documents without what he believed to be lawful cause, and his insistence on recording had combined into a set of factors the officer had read as defiance and danger. From beginning to end, the system treated the officer's statements as the default truth and his actions as the problem to be explained. For Andre, the repetition of being pulled over, questioned, and treated as suspicious without meaningful explanation had accumulated into a heavy weight. This latest escalation, with a smashed window and an arrest, turned that weight into something harder, a determination to challenge the way the story would be written about him. The incident moved from being only a personal trauma to being a potential case. After the arrest, Andre decided he would not let the broken window and the non-compliant label become just another line in a police report. He collected what evidence he could. His own phone recording showed him seated with his hands visible. A bystander's video showed the officer smashing the window and pulling him out while he stayed controlled. When his case was reviewed by lawyers, the pattern was clear. He was a black driver stopped on a disputed traffic claim, treated as armed and dangerous without any real basis, forced out of the car, searched, arrested, and then described on paper as the problem. The lawsuit they filed against the San Diego Police Department focused on 4 main points: excessive force, illegal search, unlawful arrest, and racial profiling. In legal terms, the argument was simple. There was no solid reason to treat him as a threat. His refusal to hand over documents and fully lower the window by itself did not justify breaking the glass and dragging him out. The search of his car was done without consent and without real probable cause. The way he was treated fit into a wider pattern of black drivers being stopped and escalated on weak pretexts. As the case moved forward, internal investigators and city lawyers had to compare the officers' written reports to the actual footage. Faced with public attention, video evidence, and legal pressure, the city agreed to settle. Andre received compensation for the damage, the arrest, and the impact on his life. More importantly, the case pushed the department to adjust its policies. The changes were not dramatic, but they were real. Tighter rules on when officers and renewed attention to racial patterns in traffic stops. Inside the department, the incident did not stay invisible. The officer who smashed the window faced discipline and a sustained finding that his use of force was out of line. The case was used in training as an example of what happens when non-compliance is used as a catch-all instead of dealing with what is actually in front of the officer. For Andre, the settlement did not erase the memory of glass hitting his lap or the feeling of being pulled out in front of strangers. It did not remove the tension he still felt when patrol lights appeared behind him, but it did give him something most people never get: official recognition that what happened to him was wrong, not just unfortunate. Over time, his case became one of those examples people in the community pointed to when they talked about policing and race. It showed how quickly a routine stop could be escalated and how critical it was to have cameras, records, and the willingness to challenge the official version. The larger lesson was straightforward. Power will often describe calm resistance as danger, especially when the person in the driver's seat is black. But when that story is confronted with evidence and pushed into the open, it can be challenged. Policies can shift. Future stops can play out differently, even if only slightly, because one person refused to let their experience be quietly filed away. For anyone watching this story, the questions are direct. Would you have had the courage to hold your ground the way Andre did? Have you seen traffic stops where the reaction didn't match the reality? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you know someone who needs to understand how these situations actually play out, send this story to them. And if you want more real, grounded stories about racism, power, and accountability, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one.
You came flying down this street. If I had stepped out 1 second earlier, you would have hit me.
I was going slow.
You don't get to talk to me like that in my... Yes, hi, I'm a resident here, and there's a man driving dangerously through our neighborhood.
I'm really scared. Can you send some...
He came flying down, blew the stop sign, jumped out, and came right at me. I felt really threatened.
Ma'am, on the 911 call, you said he nearly hit you and blew through a stop sign. In the video, he stopped well before you, and I'm not seeing a stop sign in that spot. Can you clarify exactly where this almost collision happened?
Well,
I mean, it felt close. Maybe not like inches, but it...
When the story began, 2 police cars were already parked on Adrian Ellison's street. Adrian stood near his own mailbox with his phone raised, recording. His SUV was a few steps away, driver's door open. Across from him, a white neighbor, Caitlin Davis, was talking quickly to the officers. Her focus was on convincing them that he was the problem. She told them he had driven too fast through the neighborhood. She told them he had almost hit her. She told them he had gotten out of the car in a way that made her feel threatened. She described herself as a scared resident who had to call 911. She described him as an aggressive driver who had confronted her for no reason. Adrian, still and controlled, told the officers something very different. He explained that he lived in the house right behind him. He explained that he had only driven down to the mailbox from his own driveway. He stated that he had been going slowly and that there had never been a moment where she was in danger. He also explained out loud for his recording exactly where his car had been, where she had been standing, and how far he was from her when he stepped out. He wanted those details clear in case later someone tried to rewrite them. From the outside, it looked like a familiar scene: a crying white neighbor describing fear, a black homeowner insisting on facts, and officers deciding whose version to treat as reality. In that moment, 3 things were happening at once. Caitlin was trying to turn her fear into proof. Adrian was refusing to accept a story that turned him into a threat at his own mailbox. The officers were deciding what would go into their report. If they accepted her version, his short drive could become an incident of reckless driving and harassment. If they accepted his, it would be a false alarm that needed to be documented very differently. For Adrian, that decision was the difference between walking back into his house and possibly being treated as a suspect in front of it. Before we go back and see how this even started, where are you watching from? Comment your country, state, or city. It's always interesting how these everyday stories reach people everywhere. And if you want more real, modern stories about racism, lies, and actual accountability, with no exaggeration and no fantasy, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. All right, here's how it got to this point. Adrian was 48 years old and long retired from the NFL. He had played wide receiver, taken the hits, earned a ring, and then stepped away. Now his life was quieter. He owned the house on that street, paid his bills, minded his business, and tried to stay off camera unless he chose otherwise. He knew his neighbors mostly as faces and first names. Some recognized him as a former player. Others just saw him as the tall black guy on the corner lot. Either way, he kept interactions polite and short. Adrian also understood something very clearly. Being calm, successful, or known did not change the fact that situations with police could turn dangerous for black men over almost nothing. He had seen enough videos to know that sometimes the first story told to 911 was the one that stuck. Because of that, he had a personal rule. If anything ever felt wrong or escalated too fast, he would record. He would narrate what was happening. He would not rely on memory alone. On the day this happened, nothing about his routine was special. He had been at home working, checking messages, and going through a normal afternoon. At some point, he remembered he hadn't checked his mail. He was wearing house clothes and simple slides. The community mailbox was just down the street. He could have walked, but he decided to drive the short distance. It was a habit he had fallen into on lazy days. He got in his SUV, pulled out of his driveway, and rolled down the street slowly. There were no kids in the road, no cars cutting through, no sudden obstacles. To him, it was a simple, careful drive of a few seconds. As he approached the mailbox, he braked normally and prepared to step out. On the other side of the street, Caitlin saw something different. She watched his SUV come down the road and, in her mind, decided it was too fast. She stepped closer to the edge of her property, paying more attention. By the time Adrian stopped near the mailbox, she had already formed a story in her head about a speeding car and a careless driver. That story did not match what his speedometer had shown, but it was the one she believed. When he opened his door to get out, she responded as if a line had been crossed. She moved toward the situation, raised her voice, and began accusing him of speeding and almost hitting her. Adrian felt the tone immediately. It went from nothing to serious in seconds. And because of everything he had seen happen to people who looked like him in similar moments, he did not argue first. He picked up his phone and started recording. What he did next, what she said next, and how quickly that turned into a 911 call is what set up the scene with the patrol cars. When Adrian hit record on his phone, the situation had already jumped several levels past normal neighbor disagreement. He had just stepped out of his SUV. He was looking at a neighbor crossing into the street, voice already raised, hands already moving. Caitlin began by accusing him of speeding. She said he had come down the street way too fast for a residential area. She claimed that if she had stepped out just a second earlier, he would have hit her. She repeated that point more than once, as if repetition could turn it into fact. Adrian stood near the front of his vehicle and listened. He kept some distance. He did not step toward her. He did not match her volume. He simply responded that he had been going slowly, that there had been no close call, and that he lived just a short way up the street. As the exchange continued, Caitlin's focus shifted from speed to whether he had broken a rule and more about whether he would accept her version of what had just happened. When he pushed back on her claim that he had almost hit her, she seemed to interpret it as defiance. Her tone sharpened. She moved slightly closer, although still not within touching distance, and began framing his disagreement as aggression. She accused him of being confrontational. She suggested that he was trying to intimidate her. Adrian, sensing the pattern he had seen in so many other situations, did not raise his own voice. That was when she pulled out her phone. She turned slightly away from him and dialed. Adrian's recording picked up only one side of that call, but it was enough. He heard her identify herself as a resident, heard her say, "There was a man in the neighborhood driving dangerously," heard her describe him as having nearly run her over. As she went on, her language shifted. She added more drama each time she repeated the story. She told the dispatcher that he had blown through a stop sign at the entrance. She said he had jumped out of the car and come at her. She said she was scared and that she needed officers to respond quickly. Adrian stood back and let his phone capture every word he could. He knew that by the time officers arrived, they would already have an image in their heads of who he was supposed to be. He was trying to build a different record at the same time. When she ended the call, her posture changed. There was a brief pause, the kind that sits between cause and effect. The sirens were not there yet, but the decision to involve them had already been made. She told him that the police were on their way and implied that they would sort him out. She framed it as if they would teach him a lesson about driving and respect. Adrian answered only by stating again that he had done nothing wrong and that everything was being recorded. He did not leave. He did not walk away angry. He stayed in plain sight next to his car and his mailbox, ready to meet whoever arrived. A few minutes later, the first patrol car turned onto the street. The officer who stepped out took in the scene quickly. One man with a phone, one woman appearing upset, a quiet residential block. He asked what was going on, and Caitlin moved immediately to control the narrative. She repeated what she had told 911, but with extra emphasis. Adrian waited until the officer turned to him. Then he gave his version. He offered his phone and said there was a recording. A second patrol car arrived while this was happening. The second officer listened more than he spoke at first. He watched both of them. He glanced at the phone Adrian was holding. The first officer separated them slightly, speaking to Caitlin a few steps away, while the second remained closer to Adrian. This was standard procedure, but the effect was important. It gave each person space to tell their story unchallenged. Caitlin leaned into that opportunity. She emphasized her fear. At one point, while trying to highlight how vulnerable she felt, she phrased it in a way that made the core of her fear plain. She contrasted herself, a white woman in her own neighborhood, with him, a black man coming toward her. She did not spell out everything, but she didn't really have to. The implication was obvious. That detail, the racial framing, mattered. It revealed that in her mind, the danger was not just about speed or distance. It was about who he was. The second officer, meanwhile, asked Adrian to explain step by step. Adrian did calmly. Then he held out his phone and offered the video. The officer watched enough to see the key points. The officer also knew what had been said in the 911 call. Those details do not vanish once officers arrive. Now there were three things to compare. What she told 911, what she told the officers on the scene, what the recording showed actually happening. The differences began to stand out. The officers stepped back toward their cars briefly and spoke quietly to each other. They discussed what they had heard, what they had seen, and what the recording showed. The second officer pointed out that the physical positions in the video did not match the almost hit description. The first acknowledged that the timeline in her 911 call did not fully match her live story. When they returned, their tone had changed. With Adrian, they became more neutral. They told him he was not being detained. They acknowledged that he clearly lived there and that he had the right to be where he was. They said they would include his recording and statement in their report. With Caitlin, the questions became more precise. They asked again about the near collision, about the stop sign, about the exact distance between her and the SUV. They reminded her that everything she said on the call and on the scene was documented. For the first time that evening, she seemed unsure. She tried to shift some details, soften some claims, but the officer's follow-up made it clear that those changes would also be part of the record. On Adrian's phone, the footage captured one quiet truth. The balance of belief was shifting. The officers left that night without arresting anyone. Adrian walked back into his house, knowing that the situation was technically over in that moment, but that the impact of what she had tried to do was not. What followed, online, in the neighborhood, and in the legal system, is where the story really shows its weight. Adrian made a decision. He took the clip showing the key moments and posted it on his social media with a clear explanation of what had happened. He simply laid out the facts. A neighbor had lied to 911 about him nearly hitting her and coming at her, and only video stopped that story from becoming the official version. The reaction came quickly. Sports fans recognized him and shared it, surprised to see a former player in that position. People who did not care about football shared it because the pattern looked familiar to them. Comments filled up with phrases like, "This could have gone differently," and "This is why people record everything." Local news stations picked it up next. They blurred house numbers but kept the essentials. A black homeowner, a white neighbor, a false claim about reckless driving and harassment, and a video that contradicted the call. They described how the officers on scene had noticed the discrepancies. In the comments under those news posts, strangers argued. Some defended Caitlin, calling it an overreaction or a misunderstanding. Others pointed out that misunderstanding did not match the level of detail she had invented about stop signs and near collisions. In Adrian's own neighborhood, the impact was quieter but real. A few neighbors sent messages saying they had seen the patrol cars that night, had wondered what happened, and were sorry he had gone through that. A couple admitted that they, too, had felt uneasy knowing how fast someone's word could turn a resident into a suspect. Not everyone was sympathetic. Some people stayed silent. Others asked why he had needed to post it at all, as if sunlight were the problem. Outside of the neighborhood, the official system was paying attention for a different reason. The call, the report, and the footage did not sit in isolation. They were reviewed. The contradictions were obvious. The speeding that did not show up on video, the near hit that did not match the physical distance, the added details that appeared only after Caitlin knew she was being recorded. The racial framing of her fear was also on record. From a legal perspective, it was no longer just an uncomfortable encounter between neighbors. It was a situation where someone had knowingly given false information to emergency services about a supposed crime. Eventually, Adrian was informed that the case was moving forward. The woman who had called 911 on him was being formally charged with filing a false police report. It was not a dramatic announcement. There were no sirens, no sudden knock on his door. It was a matter-of-fact notification that her attempt to weaponize the system had crossed a line the law recognized. He was given the chance to provide a formal statement and to make it clear whether he wanted the process to continue. He thought about how easily he could have said he was tired of it, that he wanted to move on. He also thought about the many people who had told him, in messages and comments, that they had lived through similar situations without cameras, without public attention, without any real recourse. In the end, he chose to cooperate fully. He confirmed that he wanted the case pursued. He did not frame it as personal revenge. For him, it was a matter of making sure there were consequences for the kind of lie that could cost someone far more than embarrassment. When the charge became public, the local news covered it. Articles and broadcasts explained that a resident had been charged for making false statements in a 911 call about her neighbor. They summarized what the recording showed and noted that her description of the incident did not match the evidence. For Caitlin, there were immediate consequences. She had to appear in court. She faced the reality that her name would be attached to the charge in public records. She was no longer just the concerned neighbor in her own story. She was the person accused of lying to the police. The legal process did not turn into a long televised trial. With the recordings and reports laid out, the evidence weighed heavily against her. In the end, she accepted responsibility through a plea. The result was a conviction related to the false report, along with penalties that included probation, community service, and required participation in educational programs instead of jail time. There was no dramatic moment of public transformation. She did not suddenly become a different person, but from that point on, any background check, any search of her name in connection with that incident would show what she had done. In neighborhood spaces, she lost standing. She was no longer invited to speak with authority about safety. Her involvement in certain committees and groups faded. People who once treated her as the informal eyes of the block stepped back, rethinking what those eyes had actually been focused on. For Adrian, the outcome brought a complicated kind of relief. The conviction did not erase the fear he had felt, standing in front of his house with patrol cars next to him. It did not erase the knowledge that without video, the night might have gone in a completely different direction. But it did something important. It put, in official language, that what had been done to him was wrong. He continued talking about the incident when invited to, not to relive it, but to underline a pattern. He explained how a false narrative, built on bias, could almost become reality in front of officers. He emphasized how critical it was to protect people from being turned into suspects by someone else's prejudice. Over time, the case contributed to broader conversations in the city. Local officials discussed the misuse of 911 for non-emergencies driven by bias. The police department reviewed its training and reminded officers to weigh what they see and what recordings show against what they are told. That is the real center of this story. Not just that a lie was told, but that the lie met a record that held up under pressure. It showed how much power one person's fear can have when that fear is believed without question. It also showed what can happen when that fear is challenged with facts, documentation, and persistence. So now it comes back to you watching this. What would you have done in Adrian's place? Have you ever been in a situation where someone's version of the story put you at risk or protected you? Tell your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Somebody reading might need to see they're not alone. And if you want more grounded, realistic stories about everyday racism, boundaries, and real accountability, not just outrage, but what actually happens next, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who needs to see it. More stories are coming.
You walked off your post.
I went to check my clock out time. My replacement is already here. She's sitting right there.
That's a violation of policy. You walked off your post. You're fired.
You do not get to yell at me. Do not yell at me.
I'm not going to argue with you. You walked off your post. You're fired. That's it. You're done here. No, you cannot.
So imagine this. You've been on your feet for 12 hours straight, guarding a lobby, dealing with deliveries, badge checks, people coming in late, people arguing about parking, all of it. Your replacement finally shows up, sits at the desk, and you take literally a minute to walk into the back and check what time you're supposed to clock out. And when you come back, some random guy you've never met looks you in the face and says, "You walked off your post. You're fired." That's exactly what happened to Marcus. In this video, we're talking about Marcus Hall, a Black independent contractor working security and operations in a big office building. He doesn't work for the building. He works at the building through a contracting agency. Big difference. By the time this starts, it's late at night. Marcus is exhausted. His replacement, Dana, is already sitting at the desk. All he does is step away to check his official clock out time. Enter Tyler. Tyler's a white gig worker brought in for extra help that night. No title, no supervisor badge, nothing. But the second he sees that post empty for a moment, he decides this is his chance to play boss. The situation starts with Marcus already pushed to his limit, but still calm. You do not get to yell at me. Do not yell at me. And that's when Tyler hits him with, you're fired, like he owns the place. In the next part, I'll walk you through that confrontation step by step and show you exactly how this fake boss moment fell apart. All right, let's break down how this even started. Marcus is at the tail end of his 12-hour shift. It's late, the lobby is quiet, and he's just trying to wrap things up correctly. He's been watching that front desk all day. People coming in without badges, delivery drivers asking where to go, tenants complaining about doors being locked. All the normal stuff. Finally, his replacement, Dana, shows up. She signs in, puts her bag down, and Marcus walks her through the basics. Which doors are locked, which packages came in late, who called about what. Normal handoff. And then he does the most reasonable thing you can do at the end of a long shift. He steps away from the desk to check his actual clock-out time. He goes into the back room where the schedule and the timekeeping system are. He's back there for maybe a minute. Dana is literally at the desk. The post is covered. When Marcus comes back out, he doesn't even get a chance to sit down or say, I'm out, before Tyler walks straight up to him like he's been waiting for this moment. Tyler's got that tone already loaded. The one that sounds like a manager, but with none of the actual power behind it. Hey, he snaps, pointing toward the desk. You walked off your post. Marcus just looks at him. He's tired, not in the mood for games. I went to check my clock-out time, Marcus says. Calm, direct. My replacement is already here. Tyler doesn't care. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't check with anyone. He goes straight for the fake power play. That's a violation of policy, he says. You walked off your post. You're fired. And that's where Marcus shuts it down. You do not get to yell at me, Marcus says, voice still low. Do not yell at me. Tyler raises his voice even more, like volume equals authority. I'm not going to argue with you, Tyler says. You walked off your post. You're fired. That's it. Marcus doesn't move. He doesn't back away. He just looks at him like, you must be out of your mind. You cannot fire me, Marcus replies. No, you cannot. You're not my supervisor. Tyler doesn't blink. Yes, I can. And right here is where you see the entitlement. He's not calm, he's not professional. He's just committed to being right, even though he has no idea how any of this works. Marcus finally spells it out for him. I went in there to see what time I should leave, he says, pointing back toward the hallway. I left my post to check my clock-out time. My replacement is already here? She's sitting right there. Dana is at the desk, watching this happen. She looks uncomfortable, because she knows Marcus didn't abandon anything. She saw him hand off the post and walk back for his schedule. Tyler ignores her completely. I don't care, he says. You can't walk off your post. You're done here. And this is where Marcus draws the line. Listen, he says, firmer now. You are not my supervisor. I don't care who you think you are. Do not talk to me like that. You can hear the shift in his tone. It's not yelling, but it's not casual anymore. This is a man who's tired, disrespected, and done playing nice with someone pretending to be in charge. I'm going to go talk to somebody actually in charge, Marcus says, because you obviously don't know what you're doing. You have no authority over me. Tyler hates that. He keeps repeating the same line. You walked off your post. You're fired. You're fired. At this point, one or two people in the lobby start paying attention. They hear, you're fired, and see this guy in plain clothes going off on the uniformed contractor who's just trying to leave for the night. A couple of them quietly pull out their phones and start recording. Marcus notices the phones and he knows exactly what time it is. He angles himself slightly so his face and Tyler's voice are clear in the shot. He looks right at Tyler and says, one more time. You do not get to yell at me. You're not my supervisor. I'm going to talk to the people who are in charge. And then he does the smartest thing you can do in that moment. He stops arguing. He doesn't curse him out. He doesn't swing on him. He doesn't storm out. He simply turns away from Tyler and walks toward the office, where the real management is. And Tyler, he's still standing there talking to nobody, insisting, "You're fired," while the people who actually matter are starting to get the full story, and the cameras are quietly catching all of it. In the next part, we're going to get into what happened after Marcus left that lobby, how those videos hit social media, and why the internet instantly clocked this guy as a male Karen trying to play boss. After the lobby incident, Marcus leaves, finishes his shift properly, and goes home. He's tired and annoyed, but he keeps it professional. No scene, no yelling, just out. When he finally checks his phone, he realizes the situation has already left the building. Those bystanders who pulled out their phones, their videos are already online. The videos don't hit crazy global numbers, but they get enough attention that people in the city see it, coworkers see it, and, most importantly, people connected to the building and the companies involved start getting sent links. By the time Marcus goes to work the next day, the situation isn't just a lobby argument anymore. Next, we'll get into what happens when he walks back in, what management tells him, and how the fake "you're fired" turns into very real consequences for the wrong guy. Next day, Marcus goes back to work like normal. He shows up on time, walks through the same lobby, same doors, same desk. The only difference now? He knows there are videos out there. He just doesn't know who's seen them yet. He signs in, and before he can even fully settle, the building operations manager, Miss Ruiz, asks to speak with him. They step into a small office off the lobby. "Marcus," she starts, "I saw the incident from last night." Marcus nods. "Okay, I sent a report to my agency." "I read it," she says, "and I've also seen the videos." That's the key part, videos, plural. Miss Ruiz doesn't drag it out. "Let me be clear," she says. "Tyler has no authority over you. He is not your supervisor. He is not anyone's supervisor. He's a temporary gig worker, brought in for one specific function." She explains they forwarded the videos and a summary of what happened to the vendor that hired Tyler. The vendor, not wanting a public problem attached to their name, pulled his assignment from the building. "In simple terms," she says, "he won't be back here. Not in that role, not at this site." Marcus asks the only question that matters for him. "And my contract?" "You're fine," she answers. "You followed procedure. Your replacement was already on post. Next time, just let the desk know you're stepping back to check the clock out time. But you did not abandon your post. You did not deserve to be yelled at. That's it. No lecture, no threat. No, we're going to have to let you go too." Just confirmation. Tyler overstepped and it cost him. The guy who thought he was the boss ended up being the only one actually removed. After that meeting with Miss Ruiz, things get very simple for Marcus. He keeps coming in, doing his job, same uniform, same desk, same routine. The only real change is how people act around him now. A couple coworkers pull him aside on different days. "I saw that video, man. You handled that better than I would have." "Glad you didn't let him talk to you crazy." Dana, his replacement from that night, quietly tells him, "I told him exactly what happened. I said I was already on post when you went to check your time. You didn't do anything wrong." The building also tightens things up. There's a short memo that goes out to staff and contractors. Gig workers and temporary staff are not allowed to give orders outside their assignment. Everyone is expected to speak to each other with basic respect. Nothing dramatic, just clear rules on paper that match what should have already been happening in reality. For Marcus, the main relief is this. He didn't lose his income over someone else's ego. He didn't get punished for defending himself. Management backed the facts, not the volume. He clocks out at the end of another long shift, steps away from the desk, and this time nobody chases him down yelling, "You're fired." He just taps his badge, checks his time, and walks out knowing one thing. The guy who tried to humiliate him in public is gone. he's still here. So let's zoom out for a second. What actually happened here? A black independent contractor did his job for 12 hours. His replacement arrived. The post was covered. He stepped away for a minute to check when he could officially go home. A white gig worker with zero authority decided that made him the boss and tried to fire him on the spot. Bystanders filmed it, posted it, and the internet saw exactly who was out of line. The person who said, "You're fired," is the only one who actually lost the job. That's not an accident. That's how entitlement looks. Why did Tyler feel so confident talking to Marcus like that? Why did he think he could control another man's livelihood when he didn't even sign his checks? This is what you see over and over. People with a tiny bit of proximity to power, acting like they own other people. And when race is in the mix, it gets even uglier. Marcus wasn't treated like a professional. He was treated like someone you can yell at and threaten just because you feel superior. The difference this time was proof. Marcus stayed calm. Bystanders recorded. Social media pushed the truth straight to the people in charge. And when the dust settled, the system actually backed the person who was right, not the one who was loud. So yeah, know your rights, know who actually supervises you, and don't let random people play boss with your life. If you want more real stories like this, racism, entitlement, and accountability actually landing, make sure you subscribe, hit the notifications, and stick around. These stories are happening every day. The least we can do is not look away.
Show me your driver's license.
For what? You didn't pull me over. We're just sitting here. What do you need my ID for?
Because you want to run your mouth to me.
We were buying food. Suspicious for buying groceries?
You're acting suspicious.
Suspicious how? What crime are you saying happened?
All right, let me paint this picture for you because it starts like one of those moments you never expect to turn into anything. Miguel and Tiana had just finished a regular grocery run after work. Nothing stressful, nothing chaotic. They're loading bags into the back seat, joking around about who forgot the eggs this time. Just a normal couple doing normal things. But then Miguel notices something that doesn't match the mood at all. A marked police SUV is parked a few spaces away, engine off, lights off. But the officer inside? He's not looking at the store entrance, not watching traffic, not talking on the radio. He's staring at their license plate, not for a second either, for a long, uncomfortable moment, writing something on his MDT, looking up, looking back down, and still saying nothing. Miguel tries to brush it off. Tiana even laughs and says, "Maybe he's bored." But once they get in the car and shut the doors, the weirdness follows them. Miguel starts the engine, checks his mirrors, goes to shift into reverse. That's when the officer suddenly swings his patrol SUV across the aisle and parks directly behind them, blocking the exit. He gets out immediately, walks fast toward the driver's side window, and without greeting, without explanation, without even saying why he's there, he demands, "Show me your driver's license." No lights, no stop, no explanation, just an order that comes out of nowhere. And that's where the story really begins. So the officer walks up on Miguel's window like, this is already a done deal. No, good evening, no, here's why I'm talking to you. Just that hard, flat tone. Show me your driver's license. Miguel looks at him, confused. For what? Miguel asks. You didn't pull me over. What do you need my ID for? The officer's face tightens. You can tell he wasn't expecting pushback. He leans a little closer to the window. Because you want to run your mouth to me. Let that sink in. Not because I saw you do something. Not because we got a call about this. Just, you annoyed me. Inside the car, Tiana is already reaching for her phone. She doesn't yell, she doesn't jump in yet. She just unlocks it and opens the camera, because she knows exactly how fast this kind of thing can flip. Miguel points to the back seat where the grocery bags are piled. We were just shopping, he says. You were staring at my license plate. Why? You're acting suspicious, the officer fires back. Suspicious. The universal word that means everything and nothing at the same time. Miguel actually laughs, but it's that nervous, angry kind of laugh. Suspicious? For buying groceries? Look at the bags in the back. What crime are you claiming happened? And here's the important part. The officer still hasn't named a single law, a single call, a single reason. He's in full uniform with a patrol SUV blocking them in, demanding ID, but he can't explain what this even is. Traffic stop? Investigation? Random power trip? Tiana finally speaks up. Are we being detained or something? She asks. What's going on? The officer ignores her and turns his attention back to Miguel. License, he repeats. Now. Miguel shakes his head. He keeps his hands on the steering wheel where everyone can see them. Not until you tell me why, he says. What's your name, officer? And that touches a nerve. I'm not getting a supervisor, the officer snaps like he's answering a question nobody asked yet. That right there tells you a lot. Nobody mentioned supervisors, but he already knows he doesn't want one. Tiana answers that for him. You're off duty, she says. If you're off duty, why are you stopping people? Because at some point in the back and forth, he did drop that line. I'm off duty, but I'm still a cop. He wanted the authority without the rules. He leans further into the driver's window, close enough that his words hit them with spit. The angle on the phone catches part of his shoulder patch and the side of his face. Because I don't know what you guys are doing, he says. And there it is, not a crime, not a report, just you guys. Miguel stays calm, but you can hear the frustration in his voice now. We're buying food, he says. We walked out of a store with a receipt and bags. You blocked us in with your car, and you still can't say what we did. If this is a legal stop, say what it is. If it's not, we're leaving. The officer's tone gets sharper. You try to leave, you're going to have a problem, he warns. Tiana's voice is quieter, but it cuts through everything. He's not even telling us what this is, she says to the camera. He just jumped out at us. Miguel looks straight at the officer. Call a supervisor, he says. Right now. The officer shakes his head. I told you I'm not getting a supervisor. So instead of doing the one thing that could clear this up, he does something else. He goes back to his patrol SUV, grabs his radio, and calls in backup like they're the threat. From inside the car, you can hear bits of it through Tiana's recording. Phrases like suspicious vehicle and non-compliant and refusing to identify. Notice what's missing. Any actual crime. Tiana turns the camera toward herself for a second. We tried to stay calm, she says quietly. He just keeps pushing. Minutes later, you hear sirens in the distance. A second patrol car is on the way. And this is where the whole thing shifts. Because that next officer, he's the one who's about to decide if this stays an ego trip or gets shut down by the actual law. By the time the second patrol car rolls into the lot, the whole energy has shifted. You've got Miguel and Tiana sitting in a parked car with grocery bags in the back. You've got one uniformed officer who's already escalated this way past normal. And now you've got a new unit pulling up, lights on, trying to figure out what exactly he's walking into. This is Officer Luis Herrera. He steps out of his car, calm, hands visible, scanning everything. He sees the setup right away. One patrol SUV blocking a parked vehicle, no cars crashed, no alarms going off, no one yelling except the first officer who looks way more worked up than the couple. He walks over to Crowley first. They speak a few feet away from the car. You can't hear everything on Tiana's recording, but you catch pieces. Suspicious vehicle. Refuse to identify. Running his mouth, you don't hear words like theft, assault, hit and run. Anything you'd expect in a real situation. Just attitude and vibes. Herrera listens, nods, but his face doesn't match the story. You can tell he's already skeptical. Then he comes to the driver's window, where Tiana is still recording. All right, what's going on, guys? He asks, calm voice. Miguel explains it straight. We were just shopping, he says. We came out, got in the car. He was staring at our plate, then he blocks us in, demands my ID, but he can't say what we did. No lights, no traffic stop. We asked for a supervisor, he refused. Tiana adds, he leaned into the car. He's in my face, spitting while he's talking, getting mad because we're asking questions. He couldn't even tell us what we did. He just jumped out at us. Herrera looks at the grocery bags in the back. He looks at Miguel's hands on the wheel. Then he looks over at Crowley, standing off to the side, arms crossed. You can almost see the decision forming in his head. He turns back to Miguel. Okay, Herrera says, keeping his tone professional. Let me be clear with you. As far as I know, we don't have any reasonable suspicion of a crime. There's no reason for a traffic stop. You're not required to identify yourself. That's it. That's the line that shuts the whole thing down. He just quietly confirms on camera what everyone watching already knows. This isn't about a crime. This is about pride. The camera catches Miguel exhaling, that kind of long breath you let out when you realize you were more scared than you wanted to admit. Thank you, he says, because he made it sound like I had no choice. Tiana keeps the camera on Herrera. We asked for a supervisor, she says. He said he wasn't calling one. Is that normal? Herrera hesitates for half a second. You can tell he's trying not to throw another cop under the bus in public, but he still keeps it honest. You always have the right to request one, he says carefully. And if a stop is happening, there should be a clear reason for it. Translation: no. This is not how it's supposed to go. He looks back at Crowley. Do you need anything else from them? He asks. Crowley doesn't answer. He just shakes his head, frustrated. Herrera turns back to the couple. You're good to go, he says. Sorry about this. And that's it. No ticket, no warning, no, I'll let you off this time. Just, you're good to go, which is basically another way of saying, you shouldn't have been stopped in the first place. They pull out slowly, still recording, and drive home. Later that night, they sit at their kitchen table, replaying the video. You can hear the officer's words clearly. You're acting suspicious. I'm not getting a supervisor. As far as I know, we don't have any reasonable suspicion of a crime. You're not required to identify yourself. Tiana looks at Miguel. People need to see this, she says. So she posts it. Clips of the confrontation, the spit, the refusal of a supervisor, and that final line from Herrera basically confirming it was all nonsense. It doesn't explode worldwide, but it doesn't have to. It starts spreading locally. Group chats, neighborhood Facebook groups, TikTok, Instagram reels, people recognize the parking lot. A few even recognize the officer. And within a few days, the video makes it exactly where it needs to go next. To the department. So here's where everything comes back around. Once the video hits the department, it doesn't just quietly sit in someone's inbox. Internal Affairs pulls everything: Tiana's clip, Herrera's body cam, radio logs, and the store's parking lot cameras. They line it all up on a timeline. What they see is simple. Miguel and Tiana walk out with groceries. No incident inside the store. No calls about a crime. Crowley sits in his patrol SUV, runs their plate, then blocks them in. He demands ID because you want to run your mouth. He refuses a supervisor. Herrera arrives and clearly states, we don't have any reasonable suspicion of a crime. There's no reason for a traffic stop. You're not required to identify yourself. There's no way to spin that into misunderstanding. They call Crowley in for an interview. He leans on all the standard phrases. Officer safety. Suspicious behavior. Non-compliant driver. But every time he says something, they roll the footage back and compare it. There's no aggressive movement from Miguel. No threats. No crime reported. Just a guy asking, for what? What did we do? And a woman asking for a supervisor. And then Internal Affairs does something else. They pull his history. Prior complaints. A couple of counseling sessions on file. A previous incident note about discourtesy and improper contact while off duty. So now it's not just one bad day. It's a pattern. The recommendation that comes out of IA isn't light. It's not retraining. It's not 3 days unpaid. They send it up the chain with one word at the top: termination. The chief reviews everything. The city attorney looks at it too, because they know if they keep this guy on, that video is going to be Exhibit A in every future complaint. A few weeks after the incident, the department drops a short public statement. No names, no apology, big enough to match what happened. Just a line saying that. An officer involved in an off-duty contact that did not meet department standards is no longer employed with the department. Inside the station, everyone knows exactly who they're talking about. For Crowley, that's the drop. Badge turned in. Gun turned in. Access cut off. He doesn't get walked out in handcuffs, but he does get walked out without a uniform, without a job, and with a video online that shows exactly why. His ego started that parking lot encounter. The camera finished it. After the dust settles, life doesn't magically go back to normal for Miguel and Tiana, but it does get quieter. A few days after the statement goes out, they each get a call from a detective in internal affairs, letting them know the investigation is officially closed and appropriate action has been taken. They already know what that means. The officer from the parking lot, gone. For Miguel, it's a weird mix. On one hand, he's relieved. So let's pull this all the way together. You've got a black couple just buying groceries. You've got an officer in full uniform in a real patrol car who decides that staring at their plate, blocking them in, and demanding ID because you want to run your mouth is somehow part of the job. And then you've got the quiet, simple sentence that blows the whole thing up. As far as I know, we don't have any reasonable suspicion of a crime. You're not required to identify yourself. That's the part I really want you to sit with. Because Miguel didn't do anything special, he didn't scream, he didn't swing, he didn't try to be a lawyer. He just asked the most basic questions. For what? What did we do? What crime are you saying happened? Can we get a supervisor? And when that failed, the camera did the rest. Here's the reality. Some people put that badge on and think it's a free pass to act on their feelings instead of the law. And some people put that same badge on and actually follow the law, like Herrera did, right there in that parking lot. So the lesson here isn't that cameras magically fix everything. They don't. But they do something important. They stop people like Crowley from hiding what they really did behind a report and some vague phrases. If Miguel and Tiana hadn't recorded, what do you think the story would have looked like on paper? Suspicious vehicle. Non-compliant driver. Refused to identify. Instead, we have the real version. And in the real version, the wrong person lost their job. If you want more breakdowns of real situations like this, everyday racism, power trips, and people actually getting held accountable, make sure you subscribe, hit the notifications, and stick around, because this stuff isn't rare. It's just finally getting caught on camera.
Hey, that's me. I'm the one who called. My Jeep was parked right here. It's gone.
You Jordan? Turn around for me. Let me see your hands.
Yeah, my name's Jordan Scott Jr. My Jeep got stolen. I just got off work, came down, and it wasn't here, so I called you.
Sure about that? Let me see some ID.
My wallet was in the Jeep. I got a picture of my license on my phone, though. That makes no sense.
So picture this. You're sitting in the back of a Miami squad car, hands cuffed behind your back, sweat sticking to the seat. There's a camera pointed straight at you, and an officer up front is already talking about charges and statements. And all you can keep saying is, I called you. I called you. Why would I call the police if I did it? That's where we're starting today. This is the story of Jordan Scott Jr., a black man in Miami who did what we're always told to do. Call 911 when something's wrong. His car got stolen. He followed the rules. He stayed where dispatch told him to stay. He waited for help. And somehow, the moment the help showed up, he stopped being a victim and became the suspect. Now, I want you to really lock in on that. Because the officers that pulled up on Jordan didn't see a worried car owner. They saw a ready-made hit-and-run driver. They had a wrecked Jeep somewhere nearby, a vague description, and a black man standing outside in a black neighborhood. That was enough. For them, Jordan's not some wild storybook character. He's a regular guy. Early 30s, works long shifts, needs his car to get to work every day. He's got a legal firearm, like a lot of people in Florida. He smokes a little weed sometimes, nothing dramatic, nothing special. On this day, all he wanted was a police report, maybe a tow truck, and a way to figure out how he's getting to work tomorrow. Instead, he ends up handcuffed in the back of a squad car, listening to officers tell him he matches the description of a hit-and-run driver nobody actually saw clearly. And yeah, that's where everything starts to go wrong. Before the handcuffs, before the back seat of the squad car, it's just Jordan walking out of his apartment in Miami after a long day, thinking about food and a shower. He hits the parking lot. The spot where his Jeep should be? Empty. No broken glass. No tow sticker. Just nothing. He stands there for a second, doing that little mental reset we all do, like, maybe I parked on the other side. He checks. Nothing. Checks again. Still nothing. That's when it clicks. The car is gone. So he does what you're supposed to do. He pulls out his phone and calls 911. He's not yelling, not slurring, not all over the place. He's clear. Yeah, my name is Jordan Scott Jr. My Jeep is gone. I parked it right here. I just got off work, came outside, and it's not here. I did not give anybody permission to take it. Dispatch asks the basic questions. Color of the car, plate number, when he last saw it. They tell him to stay put, stay visible, and wait for officers. And that's exactly what he does. Now here's the part they don't tell you in the brochure. While Jordan is waiting like a good citizen, there's already another call-out. A Jeep crashed a few blocks away, hit another car, driver ran off on foot. Witnesses give the classic lazy description. Black male, dark clothes, maybe like 5'8", medium build, no face ID, no name, nothing solid. So when officers Daniels and Jay Collins roll up, they're not just thinking, car theft report. They're thinking, maybe this is our hit-and-run guy. They pull up, lights on. Jordan steps forward a little, phone in his hand, trying to wave them down. Hey, that's me. I'm the one who called. Daniels is already sizing him up. Eyes go from his face to his hoodie to his shoes. You Jordan? Yeah, my car. Turn around for me. Let me see your hands. No, good evening. No, tell me what happened first. We're already at command voice. Jordan's confused, but he does it. Hands up, palms out. My Jeep got stolen, man. I just got off work, came down, and it was gone. I called you guys. Jay Collins asks, almost like a script. What were you wearing when you were driving earlier today? Jordan answers, driving? I wasn't. I've been at work. You sure about that? Jay Collins asks. And right there in that little, you sure about that? You feel it. They're not treating him like someone who lost their car. They're treating him like he's already lying. Daniels asks for ID. Jordan reaches slowly, tells him where his wallet usually is. My wallet was in the Jeep. I got a picture of my license on my phone, though. So your Jeep is gone and your wallet is gone, Daniel says, like he just cracked a case. Convenient. Let that sink in. The man's car is stolen, and somehow that's suspicious. Jordan pulls up the photo of his license. They look at the name, look at him, then look at each other. Daniels goes, you know there was a hit and run with a Jeep that matches this description a few blocks away, right? Jordan answers, yeah, that's why I called. Someone took my car. How else would it get there? You match the description of the driver, Daniel says. Now remember, nobody actually saw the driver's face. The clothing doesn't quite match. The height's off. But all Daniels needs is black male and Jeep, and he's locked in. Jordan tries one more time. Bro, why would I call you if I crashed my own car and ran? That makes no sense. Daniels doesn't even answer that. He just moves to the next step. For my safety and yours, I'm going to detain you while we figure this out. Turn around, hands behind your back. And look, this is the move. They say detain, not arrest, like it's no big deal. But the cuffs feel the same. They pat him down, no weapon on him, nothing in his pockets but keys to his apartment and his phone. Then Jay Collins goes, I smell marijuana, which of course is the magic phrase. That smell suddenly authorizes a lot of things they wanted to do anyway. They start looking around the area where his car used to be. Their shining lights opening his backpack he set by the stairs when he came down. Jordan protests, "Yo, that's my bag. I didn't say you could go through that." "Relax," Jay Collins says. "If you got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about." Inside, they find a small bag of weed and a locked case with his firearm. Legal gun, something he bought after a previous break-in. Paperwork, usually kept in his wallet. He tries to explain, "The gun is mine. It's legal. The permit's in my wallet, which was in the Jeep." "We'll sort that out at the station," Daniel says. "Right now, you're being detained on suspicion of leaving the scene of an accident and filing a false report." False report. For calling about his own stolen car. They guide him to the squad car, duck his head, sit him in the back. The officers don't care. They've already decided what story they're writing. So now Jordan is in the back of the squad car, cuffs on, still trying to process how reporting his stolen car turned into this. Officer Daniels is in the driver's seat typing on the laptop, and Officer Jay Collins is standing outside, door cracked, acting like this is just routine. Jordan Scott Jr. looks straight at Daniels through the cage and says, "Officer, my name is Jordan Scott Jr. I called 911 because my Jeep was stolen. I didn't crash anything. I didn't run from anything." Daniels doesn't look back. He just keeps typing and says, "Jordan, you're being detained because you match the description of a hit-and-run driver. We'll sort it out at the station." Jordan shakes his head and says, "You never saw the driver." "You said that. So how do I match?" No answer. Just keyboard clicks. They drive him to the station. At booking, a different officer at the desk, Officer Green, reads the list off like it's a grocery order. You're being charged with leaving the scene of an accident, filing a false police report, possession of a firearm, and possession of marijuana. Jordan stares at him and says, "I called you. How is that a false report? My car really is gone." Officer Green shrugs and says, "You can argue that in court, sir." They take his shoelaces, his phone, his watch. He asks about his wallet again. Jordan says, "My wallet was in my Jeep. The officer said he saw it. Where is it?" Green flips through a property sheet and says, "No wallet logged here, just your keys and your phone." So, already, we've got a missing wallet and a list of charges built on a story that doesn't make sense. They put Jordan in a holding cell. It's just concrete, a bench, and time. A lot of time to replay everything in his head. He keeps going back to one line he said outside. "Why would I call the police if I did it?" And that's the crazy part. That question never gets an answer from any of the officers. Hours later, Jordan finally gets released, on bond and with court dates. It's dark outside now. He steps out of the station with a plastic property bag and no car. He gets home, exhausted, humiliated, and still technically facing criminal charges. Later, Jordan meets with a lawyer and goes over the basics. What he said on the call, what happened when officers showed up, what they claimed he did. The lawyer listens, looks at the timeline, and tells him straight, "Lawyer, you called before they even contacted you. That matters. Their story and your call don't match up. We're going to push back." Meanwhile, a shorter piece of the whole situation starts to leak into public view. Somebody shares that moment in the squad car where Jordan says, "Jordan, in the car, I called you. Why would I call the police if I did it?" That line hits hard because it's simple and it's true. It ends up on social media with a caption calling out how the victim got turned into the suspect. So now, while Jordan is trying to keep his life together and figure out how to fight this in court, strangers online are already debating what happened to him. The department might think it's just another case file, just another arrest. But at this point, it's already more than that. It's a story people are paying attention to. After a while, the case lands on a prosecutor's desk. They have to look at everything together. On one side, the story in the paperwork says, this guy crashed his Jeep, ran away, and then made up a fake stolen car story to cover it. On the other side, The timeline says something else. Jordan called 911 right after he noticed his car was gone. There's no clear ID tying him to the crash. The description they're leaning on is vague and doesn't fully match him. The extra gun and marijuana charges came from a search that started with a very shaky, "you match the description." For a prosecutor, that's a mess. And at some point, they do the calculation and decide it's not worth trying to push this in court. So the word comes down. All charges against Jordan are dropped. No trial, no conviction. On paper, the criminal case is over. But here's what dropping charges doesn't erase: the night he spent in custody, the stress on him and his family, the fact his name was attached to those charges at all, the feeling of knowing he called for help and got treated like a suspect because of who he is and where he lives. On the police side, with the clip circulating and people talking, the department can't completely ignore it. An internal unit starts reviewing the incident. Inside the department, officers involved might get pulled off the street for a while, sat down for interviews, told that policy reviews are underway. Publicly, a spokesperson offers the standard line. Police spokesperson: "We're aware of the situation and we're conducting an internal review to determine whether all policies were followed." For Jordan, the decision to drop charges is a win, but it's not justice, because the real damage is bigger than one case file. He's now a man who did exactly what the system told him to do and found out how fast that system can turn on him. And that's why, instead of just being relieved and walking away, he decides with his civil rights lawyer to take it a step further and file a lawsuit. They're not just talking about a bad night. They're naming it: wrongful arrest, unlawful search, and false prosecution. And that's where the story shifts from "you're lucky your charges got dropped" to "no, you're going to answer for what you did." Once the charges are dropped, Jordan should feel free. But it doesn't really feel like that. He meets again with the civil rights attorney. This time, the tone is different. No more panic about the criminal case. Now it's about accountability. The attorney lays it out straight. "Attorney, you called to report a stolen car. You were treated like a suspect, searched, arrested, and charged. That is not just a misunderstanding. That's wrongful arrest, unlawful search, and false prosecution. We can sue." Jordan doesn't jump at it for revenge. He's tired. He just doesn't want this to be normal. "Jordan, I don't want this happening to somebody else who can't fight it. Let's do it." So they file the lawsuit. It names the city, the department, and the officers involved. It spells out in plain language: he was the victim of a stolen vehicle. He was misidentified and profiled. He was charged without real evidence. At the same time, Jordan slowly starts rebuilding his routine. He went from suspect on their report to plaintiff on his own. All right, let's step back from the details and look at what really happened here. A black man in Miami, Jordan Scott Jr., did exactly what the system tells you to do. His car was stolen. He called 911. He waited where they told him to wait. And because he was a black man in a black neighborhood, standing near the problem instead of running from it, he got flipped from victim to suspect in minutes. That's the core of this story. The officers didn't have a clear ID. They didn't have a solid description. What they did have was a crashed Jeep, a vague black male description, and a black man who was convenient to blame. So they built a case on that, stacked charges, wrote him up like a criminal, and if he didn't have a lawyer, if he didn't push back, if that one line didn't hit people online, why would I call the police if I did it? This could have easily ended as just another quiet guilty plea from somebody who didn't actually do what they were accused of. That's why this matters. Because there are a lot of Jordans out there who don't get the charges dropped, who don't get a civil rights attorney, who don't get a headline or a clip going around social media. So when people say, "just cooperate, just do what they say, you'll be fine," this is the counterexample. Jordan cooperated. Jordan followed instructions. Jordan still got arrested. If you want more breakdowns of real situations like this, racism, abuse of power, and people actually fighting back through the system, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and stay tuned. We're not done talking about this.